Welcome to PodAIcast_official. We'd love for you to join our community of learners, so please think about subscribing right now if you haven't already. Today, we're embarking on a really crucial exploration, looking into some complex psychological patterns. The kind that can really shape our lives, often without us even realizing it.
Absolutely. Our focus today is the really groundbreaking work of Jeffrey E. Young and Janet S. Klosko. Specifically, we're digging into their program for changing these lifelong negative behaviors, patterns they call life traps. We'll be unpacking the main ideas and some fascinating case studies from their key book, Reinventing Your Life. The aim is to give you a clearer picture, maybe a roadmap for self-discovery.
And I think the reason this resonates, why it hits home for so many, is just how universal it feels. We all do it, right? In some part of our lives, especially maybe in relationships, we repeat behaviors that just don't serve us. They're self-defeating. We end up choosing the wrong partner again, or we get stuck in the same kind of rut at work. Maybe we just can't seem to speak up for what we need. It feels like we're walking towards the same emotional pain over and over. So why? Why do we keep doing that? That's what we're uncovering today, this idea of life traps. These deeply rooted negative beliefs about ourselves, blueprints really, that started way back in childhood. And we'll outline the process, the quite rigorous steps the author suggests for, well, personal reinvention.
Yeah, and it's more than just, an interesting theory. It's the kind of knowledge that can give you a language for that inner struggle. It helps turn those vague feelings, maybe inadequacy or just constant anxiety, into something recognizable, patterns you can actually work on.
Okay, so let's really unpack this core idea. What exactly are these life traps? How are they different from, say, just having bad habits or some personality quirks?
Well, the sources define them pretty clearly. They're lifelong, pervasive patterns, and crucially, self-destructive ones. Psychologists also call them schemas. Basically, they determine how we think, how we feel, how we act, and importantly, how we relate to other people. Think of them as like your brain's original instruction manual for dealing with the world, written when you were very, very young.
And the authors point out three key features that really define these patterns, right?
That's right. Three crucial things. First, they start early and they are lifelong. They stick around. They're not just a phase. They've likely been with you since childhood or adolescence. Second, they involve behaviors that are ultimately self-destructive. Now, the original intent might have been about protection or survival back then, but in adulthood, the behavior causes harm. And third, they represent this intense inner struggle. It's like a fight for psychological survival, an attempt to cope with a world that felt, well, unsafe or chaotic, or maybe just unloving when you were small.
And the real kicker, the insight that makes this so powerful, is what they call the irony of repetition. This idea that the life trap makes us repeat the emotional dynamics of our childhood traumas
Yeah.
as adults.
Yes, this is the mechanism we absolutely have to grasp. It's central. So for instance, if you grew up in a home that felt emotionally chaotic, you might, without realizing it, seek out partners who are also emotionally chaotic. Or maybe you create drama in relationships that are actually quite stable.
Why would we do that? It sounds completely counterproductive.
It does, but it's about familiarity. The familiar, even if it's painful, often feels more real or comfortable than something healthy but unknown. A stable, secure relationship might feel foreign, maybe even boring, right? Because that intense emotional charge, the drama associated with the original life trap, is missing. So we subconsciously look for situations or people that reinforce the original pain. It sort of proves in a twisted way that our inner belief, that negative core idea about ourselves or the world, is correct. We feel strangely alive in that familiar chaos.
Wow. So it's not just that we aren't learning from mistakes. It's more like we're actively, subconsciously trying to confirm this old story about ourselves that got imprinted years ago.
Precisely. If your internal blueprint says, people always leave me, you might unconsciously choose partners who are likely to leave. Or maybe you behave in ways clinginess, anger, suspicion that actually push them away. Either way, the prophecy gets fulfilled and the schema feels validated. See? I knew it.
But these schemas, these life traps, they don't just come out of nowhere. You mentioned they form early. It's a mix of our innate temperament, what we're born with, and, importantly, difficult or destructive family environments. What kinds of early situations typically set the stage for these traps?
The sources give a pretty thorough rundown. It can range from obvious trauma like having parents who were physically or verbally abusive. That's pretty clear. But life traps also grow out of more subtle, chronic hurts. Things like having an emotionally distant parent who maybe had super high expectations, perfectionistic standards you could never meet.
Oh.
Or maybe growing up with constant fighting between parents where the child feels caught in the middle or even responsible. Emotional neglect is a big one too. Maybe a parent was physically there but sick or depressed or just unavailable emotionally. And perhaps the other parent wasn't able to compensate.
So neglect isn't just about being left alone physically. It can be that lack of emotional connection, even if someone's in the room.
Exactly. And even things that might seem less severe on the surface can create traps. The authors talk about enmeshment, where the child sort of becomes the parent's confidant or substitute partner, losing their own sense of self. Or the opposite, chronic overprotection, which sounds caring, but actually stops a child from developing independence and confidence. Then there's constant criticism, or being overindulged without any limits, or even experiencing severe rejection by peers during those really sensitive school years. The common thread in all of this is a fundamental lack, a deprivation of basic psychological needs during those crucial formative years.
Okay, that leads perfectly into what the authors present as a kind of map. The 6 core needs of a child. They argue there are 6 essential things kids need to thrive psychologically. And when these needs aren't met, that lack leads directly to specific life traps later on.
Yes, understanding this connection is key. It links the struggles you might feel today directly back to what was missing then. Let's go through them. First, basic safety. This is about feeling secure, stable, protected by caregivers. Predictability. If that's missing, it can lead to the abandonment life trap, that constant fear of losing people you care about. Or the mistrust life trap, the expectation that others will hurt, abuse, or manipulate you.
Okay, safety first. What's the second need?
Second is connection to others. This is about needing intimacy, empathy, a sense of belonging, being understood. If this need is unmet, you might develop the emotional deprivation life trap. This is that deep, aching feeling that your need for love, understanding, or just basic connection will never really be met. It's a profound loneliness. Or it could lead to the social exclusion life trap, feeling fundamentally different, inferior, like an outsider looking in, never really part of the group.
Right. Then the third need is autonomy. This is about developing a sense of competence, being able to function independently in the world.
Exactly. And when that's stifled, maybe by overprotective parents, you often see the dependence life trap develop. That feeling of being incompetent, needing someone else to guide you through life, make decisions for you. Or it can manifest as the vulnerability life trap. This isn't just general worry, it's a chronic, overwhelming fear that some catastrophe is always just around the corner. Illness, financial ruin, accidents, and feeling totally incapable of coping if it happens.
Okay. Fourth is the need for self-esteem, feeling worthy, valued.
A crucial one. Lack here often leads to one of 2 powerful traps. First, the defectiveness life trap. This is the belief that you are fundamentally flawed on the inside. Bad, worthless, unlovable. And if anyone really knew you, they'd be disgusted and leave.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It is. Alternatively, deprivation of self-esteem needs can lead to the failure life trap. Here, the focus shifts more to performance. It's the belief that you're just incompetent compared to others, especially in work or achievement. This leads to avoiding challenges, procrastination, feeling humiliated easily. One is about being bad, the other about doing badly.
Got it. What's the 5th need?
Number 5 is self-expression. This is the freedom to express your genuine needs, feelings, opinions, preferences, without fear of punishment or making someone angry or feeling excessive guilt. When this freedom is denied, you might develop the subjugation life trap. This means you consistently put others' needs first, often out of fear or guilt. Your own desires get suppressed. A related trap here is unrelenting standards. This is where you internalize the belief that you must meet incredibly high, often perfectionistic standards to be acceptable, or that you have to sacrifice constantly. Pleasure and relaxation feel undeserved.
And finally, the 6th need.
The 6th core need is for realistic limits. This is about learning self-control, discipline, respecting rules, and the rights of others. Basically, understanding that you can't always have everything you want instantly. When parents fail to set these healthy boundaries, perhaps by being overly indulgent or inconsistent, the result is often the entitlement life trap. This shows up as poor impulse control, a lack of discipline, feeling superior, and expecting special treatment. Or believing you shouldn't have to follow the same rules as everyone else. So this whole map, the need, how it was unmet, and the specific trap that results, that's the lens we need to use to understand these lifelong patterns.
Okay, now that we have the framework, let's dive into some of these specific life traps, especially the ones that really wreak havoc on our relationships. The abandonment life trap sounds like a big one, that fear of loss,
It's incredibly powerful and painful, yes. It's this pervasive, constant, underlying fear that people you love will leave you, disappear, or die, and you'll be left alone forever. It often comes from actual early loss, like a parent dying or leaving, or maybe just from an unstable home environment where caregivers were unpredictable. The result in adulthood is often intense anxiety during separations, even short ones, like a partner being late. There's this deep-seated belief that abandonment is inevitable. And when it gets triggered, say, by a partner going on a trip, it doesn't just cause sadness, it can unleash panic, deep grief, and sometimes really intense anger.
The case studies really bring this to life. Like Abby, the 28-year-old whose father died when she was young. Her husband's business trips aren't just inconvenient. They trigger that childhood terror. She's overwhelmed with anxiety, and then when he returns, she lashes out in anger. It's like she's punishing him for the fear he unknowingly activated.
Exactly. She's replaying the past and confirming her fear that stability isn't possible. And then there's Patrick, 35. His childhood was marked by his mother's alcoholism, constant instability. Now, he's married to Francine, who is repeatedly unfaithful. And yet, Patrick clings to her. It seems backward, right?
Completely. Why stay?
Because, subconsciously, the turbulence feels familiar. It matches his internal script of relationships being unreliable. He's drawn to the chaos he grew up with. A stable, faithful partner might actually feel more threatening because it would challenge his core belief, forcing him to confront the emotional void from his childhood. Repeating the known pain can feel easier than facing that.
That pull towards the familiar, even if it's destructive, seems to be a key theme. Okay, moving from fear of loss to expecting actual harm, we have the mistrust and abuse life trap.
Yes, this one is characterized by a core expectation that other people will inevitably hurt you, that they'll cheat, lie, manipulate, humiliate, or take advantage of you somehow. So relationships are viewed as dangerous territory. You expect betrayal. This naturally leads to being very defensive, hypervigilant, always looking for signs of trouble, and avoiding vulnerability like the plague. Trust feels impossible.
The source mentions Madeline, a survivor of sexual abuse in childhood. She consciously wants a family, a loving partner, but her trauma created this deep-seated schema: men will inevitably exploit her. This belief profoundly affects her ability to form healthy, trusting relationships because she's always on high alert, interpreting neutral actions through a lens of potential threat.
Her internal programming says vulnerability leads to harm. So, avoiding intimacy, keeping people at arm's length, becomes a survival strategy, even though it results in loneliness. She's essentially protecting the wounded child inside by keeping the adult self perpetually guarded.
Okay, next is the emotional deprivation life trap. This one seems less about active harm and more about a fundamental lack of connection.
That's right. This life trap is the deep, pervasive belief that your core emotional needs for love, empathy, understanding, guidance, protection will just never be adequately met by anyone. It leaves people feeling chronically lonely, disconnected, empty, misunderstood, even if they seem successful or have lots of people around them superficially. It's like being emotionally starved, even at a banquet.
And the origins often lie with caregivers, particularly maybe maternal figures who were cold or self-absorbed or just couldn't provide that consistent emotional warmth and responsiveness. So the child learns that their needs just don't get met.
Exactly. Look at Jed, the successful stockbroker in the case study. Outwardly, he's got it made. But he struggles immensely with real intimacy. He can't seem to let people get close emotionally. He feels chronically lonely, yet he consistently chooses partners who are themselves emotionally shallow or unavailable. Why?
The familiar pattern again.
Precisely. A genuinely warm, available partner would feel alien, maybe even overwhelming. Choosing unavailable partners confirms his core belief. See? No one can really meet my needs. The schema stays intact.
And Elizabeth, the social worker, she seems different, very nurturing herself.
She shows another side of it. She pours her energy into caring for others, her clients, her child. But her own marriage is to Josh, who's emotionally distant. She feels profoundly unfulfilled, empty in the relationship. She's replicating that dynamic from her childhood, choosing a partner who mirrors the emotional unavailability she experienced. She sacrifices her own needs, perpetuating the deprivation, while maybe telling herself she's being noble or strong. And this highlights something critical. These life traps don't just shape who we think we are, they strongly influence who we choose as partners. We often seek people who fit our schema, turning relationships into a stage for replaying the original wound.
That's a sobering thought. Let's touch on the last pair in this section, the ones related to self-worth: defectiveness and failure.
Okay. The defectiveness life trap is purely about your internal sense of self. It's the core belief that you are fundamentally flawed, bad, rotten, inferior, or just plain unlovable deep down inside. There's often immense shame attached to this. People with this trap live in fear of being found out. They avoid intimacy or true closeness because they believe if someone saw the real them, they'd be rejected instantly.
And failure is more about external performance.
Yes, the failure life trap is the persistent, nagging belief that you are incompetent compared to your peers, particularly in areas like career, skills, or achievements. You feel like you just don't measure up. This leads to feelings of humiliation, sometimes depression, and often self-sabotaging behaviors like procrastination or avoiding challenges altogether. Why try if you're convinced you'll fail anyway becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it's clear these life traps aren't just feelings. They drive behaviors that actually keep a whole cycle going. We have these schemas, but how do they persist for years, decades even? The authors talk about three main coping styles: surrender, escape, and counterattack. These are like the engines keeping the life trap running.
Yeah, understanding these coping styles is crucial because they explain how we perpetuate the problem. Let's break them down. Surrender is perhaps the most direct and often the most obviously painful. It means you basically accept the life trap as true and act accordingly. So, someone with the defectiveness schema might surrender by repeatedly choosing partners or friends who are critical, judgmental, or dismissive. This confirms their belief that they're flawed and don't deserve better treatment. They might even feel uncomfortable in healthy relationships because it doesn't match their internal script.
Okay, so surrender is living out the life trap. What about escape?
Escape is all about avoidance. You try to avoid situations, people, or even feelings that trigger the life trap. You numb yourself or arrange your life to never poke the bear. For example, someone with the abandonment life trap might avoid deep commitment altogether. They stick to casual dating or pour themselves into work to avoid the risk of getting close and being left. Internally, escape can look like emotional suppression, maybe using substances, excessive work, compulsive behaviors like gaming or shopping anything to avoid feeling the pain associated with the life trap. Brandon, in the source material, avoids deep connections and uses alcohol. He's escaping the underlying issues. It offers temporary relief, but keeps the life trap firmly in place, unexamined.
Right. Avoidance doesn't solve anything. And the third style, counterattack, sounds almost like the opposite.
It looks like it, but it's just as much a defense mechanism. Counterattack is when you try to fight the life trap by acting complete opposite. You overcompensate. So someone with the defectiveness trap might counterattack by acting arrogant, overly critical of others, or desperately seeking status and admiration. Think of Max or Alex in the case studies trying to prove their worth through external validation. Or someone with a dependence trap might counterattack by becoming fiercely, rigidly independent, refusing any help at all. Their outward strength is really just armor hiding the deep fear of inadequacy. It pushes people away and prevents real connection.
That makes sense. Let's look at some specific life traps where these coping styles really come into play. Starting with the dependence life trap. This is about feeling incompetent, right?
Yes, the core feeling is being unable to handle life's responsibilities alone. Feeling overwhelmed, needing constant guidance, reassurance, help with decisions from someone perceived as stronger, often a parent or partner. But here's the twist. This total reliance often breeds hidden resentment, unexpressed anger, anxiety, especially if the relationship feels controlling or stifling.
Wait, why anger if they're getting the support they feel they need?
Because dependence comes at a cost. Your autonomy, your freedom. Even if you feel you need the support, you might also resent feeling infantilized or controlled by the person you depend on. There's a loss of self. The origins are often in those parenting extremes we mentioned earlier. Either parents who were so overprotective they never let the child develop competence, or, paradoxically, parents who are underprotective maybe overwhelm themselves, leaving the child feeling swamped and inadequate very early on.
And this is where that counterdependence coping style shows up strongly.
Exactly. Counterdependence is a form of counterattack against the dependence life trap. Think of Christine in the examples. She appears incredibly independent, successful, refuses all help, even when injured. She's desperately trying to prove she doesn't need anyone, fighting that underlying fear of being helpless. But this constant vigilance, this refusal to be vulnerable or accept support, creates enormous anxiety and often leads to burnout. It's not true independence, it's a reaction against fear. The goal is to move towards genuine adult interdependence, not rigid counterdependence.
Okay. Next up is the vulnerability life trap. The authors called this a life devoted to anxiety, which sounds intense.
It really is. This trap involves excessive, constant worry about imminent catastrophe. It could be about health becoming hypochondriacal, or safety fearing crime, accidents, or finances convinced ruin is just around the corner, or even going crazy. These worries often lead to panic attacks, obsessive checking behaviors, and significant avoidance. Avoiding travel, social events, anything perceived as risky. The key is that the perceived threat level is way out of proportion to reality. It's anxiety dictating life choices.
And Heather's case illustrates this. Her anxiety, stemming from an overprotective childhood, restricted her whole life.
Yes, her fear of flying, for instance, wasn't just an inconvenience. It shaped her marriage, limited her experiences. Her childhood taught her the world was dangerous, and her life trap keeps reinforcing that belief through constant worry and avoidance. This is where behavioral strategies become crucial, like gradual exposure to the feared situations, learning to manage the panic response. It's about testing reality against the fear.
Okay, shifting back to how we relate to others.
Yeah.
The subjugation life trap. This is about suppressing your own needs.
Exactly. It's about consistently putting others' needs and desires ahead of your own. Your choices are dictated by how they will affect other people, usually out of fear of conflict, guilt, or potential abandonment if you assert yourself. This leads to a lot of buried anger, resentment, and a feeling of being trapped or unseen. The internal message is often, "My needs don't matter," or "It's selfish to want things for myself."
And there are two main flavors of this, self-sacrifice and submissiveness.
Right. Self-sacrifice is often driven by an exaggerated sense of responsibility or guilt. You feel compelled to take care of everyone else, often at great personal cost. Submissiveness is more rooted in fear of anger, confrontation, or rejection if you don't comply with others' wishes. Carlton's story is a good example of self-sacrifice. He learned early on to support his sick mother, suppressing his own needs. As an adult, he continued this pattern, letting others take advantage of him. Therapy helped him start asserting himself, learning his needs matter too. People with this life trap are often drawn to or attract dominant or narcissistic partners. It recreates that familiar dynamic where their needs get overlooked.
So the way out involves learning to actually state what you want, even in small ways.
Absolutely. It starts small, learning to identify your own preferences, voicing an opinion, even if it differs, making small choices based on your desires, like, yes, ordering the salmon even if your partner wants something else. It also requires consciously examining your relationship choices. Are you choosing partners who respect your needs or ones who expect you to cater to theirs? And learning to recognize and express the anger that signals your boundaries are being violated is key.
Okay, finally, the traps related to limits. Unrelenting standards and entitlement. Two ends of a spectrum.
Exactly. Unrelenting standards is that internal pressure cooker. Constant striving for perfection, meeting incredibly high standards, often linked to status, appearance, or achievement. It leads to chronic stress, burnout, difficulty relaxing, and often a sense of dissatisfaction even when you are successful. Pamela, the doctor, and Keith, the newscaster, they're driven but never feel good enough. They think, if I just achieve this next thing, then I can relax. But the goalposts always move. Life, pleasure, relationships often get sacrificed on the altar of perfectionism. Their emotional life just passes them by.
And entitlement is the opposite problem, a lack of limits.
Yes. Stemming from insufficient limits in childhood, this trap involves the core belief that I'm special, the rules don't apply to me, and I should be able to do or have whatever I want.
Yeah.
It manifests as poor impulse control, low frustration tolerance, difficulty with discipline, and often disregard for others' needs or rights. You see spoiled entitlement demanding special treatment, acting superior, and dependent entitlement where the person expects others to take care of them, like Nina, who couldn't hold down a job because she felt she shouldn't have to do things she didn't want to. Changing this requires facing reality, developing empathy, accepting limits, and challenging the belief that you're above the rules everyone else follows. It often requires firm boundaries from others.
Okay, so we've identified the traps, we see how they work, but recognizing them is just the start, right? Actually changing these deep patterns, reinventing your life, as the book title suggests, requires a certain mindset. The authors lay out 7 basic assumptions for this journey.
Yes, setting the right foundation is crucial because change is hard. Assumption 1 is managing expectations. Expect it to be difficult. It's often erratic, like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Setbacks are normal, not signs of failure. Embracing that helps prevent giving up.
That's realistic. What's number 2?
Number 2 is more hopeful. We all have an innate desire for happiness. There's a healthy part of you, maybe buried deep, that wants fulfillment, connection, joy. The work involves tapping into that healthy side, giving it a voice again.
Okay. And number 3.
Third, the authors firmly believe in our capacity for change. Yes, temperament matters, early experiences are powerful, but fundamental personality change is possible. It's not easy, but it can be done, which leads directly to number 4, resistance to change. We have to acknowledge that we will naturally resist altering these ingrained patterns. They feel familiar, predictable, even if they hurt. Change feels uncertain, scary. So conscious, sustained effort is needed to overcome that resistance.
Makes sense. We cling to what we know. What about the 5th assumption?
Number 5 is critical. We must be willing to avoid avoidance, essentially, meaning we need to face the pain. Growth requires confronting uncomfortable emotions tied to the life trap, the sadness, the anger, the shame from those early experiences. Trying to bypass the pain just keeps the trap alive. You have to feel it to heal it.
That sounds tough, but necessary. What are the last 2?
6 relates to the how. Effective change requires diverse methods. It's not just about thinking differently, cognitive, or acting differently, behavioral. It needs to integrate emotional work, too, often drawing on psychodynamic ideas to get to the roots. No single approach usually cuts it for deep-seated schemas. And finally, number 7, the importance of creating a personal vision. Change isn't just about stopping the bad stuff. You need a positive goal, a vision of what a healthier, happier life looks like for you. What are you moving towards? That vision provides motivation.
This framework helps explain why their approach, schema therapy, might differ from, say, standard cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
Exactly. Schema therapy definitely builds on CBT principles, identifying negative thought patterns, challenging distortions, changing behaviors. That's all there. But it goes deeper. Where traditional CBT might focus mainly on current thoughts and behaviors, schema therapy puts a much stronger emphasis on the childhood origins of the problems. And critically, it incorporates techniques specifically designed to heal the underlying emotional wounds from childhood, not just manage the symptoms. It uses emotion-focused and experiential techniques much more heavily.
Can you give examples of those specialized techniques for deeper healing?
Sure. 2 core ones are imagery rescripting and chair work, often used for dialogues. Imagery involves guiding the person to visualize difficult childhood memories, but then rescripting them, imagining the adult self stepping in to protect, nurture, or validate the vulnerable child self in that scene. It helps change the emotional meaning of the memory. Dialogues, sometimes using empty chairs to represent different parts of the self or figures from the past, allow for expressing pent-up emotions and needs directly to the source of the wound, or integrating conflicting internal parts. And then there's the concept of limited reparenting within the therapy relationship itself.
Right. Limited reparenting. That sounds intriguing, but also potentially tricky. How does a therapist actually do that ethically and effectively? Is it just being supportive or more active?
It's more active than just general support, but always within strict professional boundaries, of course. It means the therapist consciously tries to meet, in a limited and appropriate way, some of the core emotional needs that were unmet in childhood. So if the client's core issue is emotional deprivation from a cold parent, the therapist provides consistent warmth, empathy, and validation. If the issue is defectiveness from constant criticism, the therapist offers genuine acceptance and helps build self-worth. It's about providing a corrective emotional experience, showing the client that relationships can be safe, nurturing, and reliable. This helps the schema feel less necessary as a defense.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's get really practical now. What are some concrete steps someone could start taking, maybe even on their own, to begin challenging these patterns?
The first phase often involves confrontation and validation. You need to really understand your life trap. How does it play out today? Keep a journal. Notice the triggers, the feelings, the automatic thoughts, the self-defeating behaviors. A very powerful exercise the authors recommend is writing letters. Not to send, usually, but for yourself. Write to the people from your past who contributed to the life trap: parents, siblings, bullies. Pour out the anger, the sadness, the disappointment, the unmet needs. Give that inner child a voice. It's about acknowledging and validating the reality of the past hurt, often for the first time. It can be incredibly cathartic.
So getting the emotion out, validating the past injury, what comes after that?
Then you start actively building a case against the life trap. This is more cognitive. You've spent years collecting evidence for the life trap. See, I failed again. Now you deliberately look for evidence against it. Make lists. What are the exceptions? When were you not abandoned? When did you succeed? When were you treated with respect? When did you cope effectively? You have to consciously challenge the schema's distorted view of reality by highlighting the times it wasn't true. This gradually weakens its hold.
Okay. And for specific traps like dependence or vulnerability, the focus shifts more towards behavior change.
Absolutely. For dependence, the work is behavioral. You have to gradually take on more responsibility. Start small. Make a decision you'd normally defer. Handle a task you'd ask for help with. And crucially, acknowledge your successes. Keep track of what you accomplish independently. Build that sense of competence brick by brick. For vulnerability, it's often about exposure. Gradually facing the feared situations, maybe driving a bit further, trying a new food, going to a slightly larger gathering while using techniques like deep breathing or mindfulness to manage the anxiety. You learn through experience that the catastrophe usually doesn't happen or that you can cope.
And for subjugation, always putting others first, the behavioral fix is learning assertion.
Yes. It's about finding your voice, often in very small steps initially. Practice forming your own opinions and preferences. State them calmly. Maybe it is just ordering the salmon, like the book says, or saying, actually, I'd prefer to watch this movie tonight. Start with low-stakes situations. Reflect on your relationships. Are they reciprocal? Do you feel seen and heard? Learn to say no, sometimes without excessive guilt. Practice advocating for yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is a sign you're stretching beyond the old pattern.
Throughout all this, which sounds like really hard work, with inevitable setbacks, what's the key attitude to maintain?
The authors call it empathic self-confrontation. That captures the balance perfectly. Empathy means having compassion for yourself. Acknowledge the pain you went through as a child. Understand why the life trap developed. Be kind to yourself when you slip up, because you will. Change is hard. But confrontation means you don't let yourself off the hook. You keep gently but firmly pushing yourself to challenge the thoughts, feel the feelings, and change the behaviors. You stay committed to the process even when it's tough. It requires persistence, honesty with yourself, and consistent effort. The ultimate goal is moving from being a passive victim of your past to an active creator of your present and future. Choosing healthier paths, one day, one choice at a time. #tag outro.
We've certainly covered a lot of ground today, really exploring these destructive schemas, these life traps. I think the key takeaway is that these painful patterns, they aren't just random flaws. They make sense when you see them as old survival strategies, rooted in unmet needs from childhood.
Exactly. And understanding them, having this language gives you a map. It helps you recognize when you're reacting from that old childhood fear versus responding as the capable adult you are now. That journey towards, real adulthood and fulfillment really involves learning to identify and challenge that negative voice of the schema day in and day out and choosing differently.
Okay, let's leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on, something provocative based on what we've discussed. The source material strongly suggests we're often drawn, almost magnetically, to partners or situations that actually reinforce our life traps. It feels familiar, even if it's painful. So here's the question for you. If you were to take an honest look at your 3 closest relationships right now, maybe personal, maybe professional, the ones that cause the most recurring friction or unease, which of your life traps might those relationships be tapping into or even unintentionally reinforcing? Just thinking about that could be a really powerful starting point for your own journey of reinvention.
It could indeed. We genuinely hope this discussion provides some useful insights and perhaps empowers you to seek more fulfilling connections and personal growth.
Thank you so much for joining us for this exploration here on PodAIcast_official. If you found this valuable, if it sparked something for you, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps us continue bringing this kind of content to you. We genuinely appreciate your support. Until next time, take care and goodbye for now.